Hi and welcome to my basement. Don't judge me. Yes, I have flip chart and markers at home. I'm an OD consultant. What do you expect? So some of you have interest in learning how to knit and crochet. So I figured I'd start something because I've been doing this for a long time. And although I'm not an expert, I figured I can at least show you something to get you started. And I know some of you have particular projects that you want to do, much like either the little animals of origami, or if you want to do a dog sweater. Anna Rose, watching you. So what I figured is that in this group there are multiple levels of people. So we'll have some people who know crochet and knit really, really well, and we have some who have never picked up any of the tools or instruments. So this video is for those that have never touched anything. Just to give you an overview, highlight a couple things, and just really talk through things to know if you are going to be yarning. That's what we'll call it. So the first thing you need to know is about the tools. So there are two types of tools that we use. So if you are crocheting, it is called a hook. And if you are using knitting or doing knitting, it's a needle. And I have a couple different examples to show you what those will look like. So we'll talk through those in a second. So as I mentioned, there are a few different types of hooks and needles depending on what craft you're doing. So I went through and I pulled from my stash. So I have many, many more than this, but this is just something to show you the different things. So this section right here are all of the different crochet hooks. So notice I start with a very tiny one, and this does thread or very tight crochet, all the way up to the very larger one. I think this is an 11.5 that does the chunky weight yarn. So what to notice here is that they come in different sizes, and they also come in different materials. So there's the metallic or metal ones as well as the plastic ones. It doesn't really matter. This is all your preference, right? So sometimes for me, the metallic ones are easier because the stitches slip off the needle or the hook faster and easier. So they help me to crochet faster. But if you want to give each other a go, they're roughly around the same price. So I'll also tell you that for your basic crochet, this I think is a 4.25, and this is I think an 8. So you'll probably want a hook somewhere between these sizes for your standard everyday projects. Over here, you'll notice that it still looks like a crochet hook, but it's a little bit longer, and there is an ending on it. Both of those endings actually have sizes on it. So this larger one is a US 8. I think it's a 5.0 millimeter, and I'm not exactly sure. Let's see if I can spin this one over. And this is a 10. So the 10 is larger, and the 8 has a smaller hook. So this is different, and I wanted to show it to you so that you're not startled by it when you go into the store. This is actually a crochet hook that is used for something called Tunisian or Afghan stitch. So different than crochet, which I'll show you shortly, where you're never holding stitches on the needle. In Tunisian or Afghan stitch, you will be. So that's why the needle is longer. You will go back and forth and make panels and then stitch them together. The other option, which I'm not going to show you unless you all ask to see it, a couple years ago this whole concept of loom knitting became very popular, and you'll have a variety of different looms, and they have a different hook. So this hook has a very pointed, sharp needle on it, and basically what you do, you wrap the yarn around it in different patterns, and then you just flip the bottom stitch over the top, and it makes a tube. Or if you go back and forth, it'll make a flat panel. It's easy and fast, and it doesn't involve much thinking about what number you're on or if you missed a stitch or not, because it's all pretty much done for you. So this is crochet. So we'll go back over here. So this is crochet hooks, Tunisian or Afghan stitch hooks, loom knitting, and again, if you buy the kit, it comes in a variety of different size looms. This is one of the smaller ones. And then we're going to transfer into knitting. So this section So these two needles, so knitting needles are different. So they come in pairs, although I only pulled pieces of them in some fashion, but this is an actual knitting pair set. These are the, I can't really see what they are. I'm gonna pick it up. It is the 5.0 gauge. So what to know about knitting needles is that they also come in different materials. So mine that I have here are in bamboo. They are great for new knitters because it's harder to pull the stitches off. I don't mean that it's very difficult, it just means that it holds the stitches better, so it's not so easy to slip. So this is, they come in pairs, so they usually have a stopper on the end. So that is a little wooden stopper, or you can get more expensive ones that have pretty baubles on the end. I actually think, I can't find it, but I have a pair that have pigs on the end too. This is also a knitting needle, but it is a little different. If you notice, it has 2 points. It's different because it's usually used for a couple of different reasons. Either it's used as a cable stitch, so if you're doing those really cool Irish cables or those Irish cable knit sweaters or Scottish cable knit sweaters, you'll use this to hold your stitches in either in front of the work or behind the work in order to make those stitches. It's also used in a set of 4 if you are knitting in a round. So if you do not have needles with wire on them, which I'll show you in a second, or plastic tubing on them, you'll use 4 of them to knit something in the round. The limitation with these needles is that your piece of work can only be as long as the needle is. That's as far as you can go. How to get larger pieces of work is through using needles that look like these. So I have a couple different styles here. So I have pink ones that are plastic, I have green ones that are metallic, and I have wooden ones that are bamboo. And notice the I guess rubber tubing that goes between them. So what it does, and I would stretch it out here, but I don't think you'll be able to see it, it lengthens the ability to knit larger pieces. You can also knit in a round with these. You'll be very easy to join it so you can knit in circles. Great investment. They are a little bit more expensive, and they do come in different sizes. So not only the size of the actual needle, notice how these are different sizes, and these are also different sizes, but in the length of the tubing. So I think the largest that I have seen is probably like a 36-inch between. But until you really know how to do the knitting stitches, I wouldn't invest in these until you're making much larger pieces of work. The other 2 tools that I added here are pretty cool. So this is something you can purchase in any craft store. It does a couple things for you. I'm going to spin it so you can see it a little bit better. The first is sometimes, if you'll notice, even with mine that I've had for a long time, the numbers or the size gauge wears off your needle. So you can use this to figure out what size your needle actually is. So in theory, there is a needle that goes all the way up to 17 and is as small as a 0. Pretty cool. So all you do is just stick it in the hole and see what size it is. The other cool thing is, and we're going to talk about it in a few minutes when I mention gauge, is that this, once you knit a swatch, you can use this to measure your gauge. You can see how many stitches you actually get into an inch. And the other piece of work down there is the yarn needle. It's great to pick them up. They usually come in packs of 4 or 6. Sometimes there's 1. But whenever you need to sew in the ends or sew pieces of work together, you can use this to do that. So that's your needles. So since this is your first crochet project, or it's been a while since you've done crochet, I thought I'd give you an option to pick which project that we'll do together. So the first thing, this is called a granny square blanket. So don't pay attention to the color. You can pick whatever colors you want. So this is not what we're choosing. We're not choosing colors, we're choosing patterns. And sometimes it's hard to see with the lighting in here, but this is a teal, a gray, and white, just for your reference. So what to know about this pattern is that it you're going to practice one stitch, and that's the double crochet stitch, and I'll show you how to do all of that when it's time to do that, so don't worry about that. But this is the difference. So we're going to start in the middle, and literally we're going to just keep going in squares and make it bigger and bigger and bigger, and then we're going to change the color, and then do that a couple times, and then make it bigger and change the color, and go until it's the size that you want it to be. So that's the granny square. So granny square is a very famous crochet pattern. Sometimes you make smaller ones and then you make a whole bunch of them and then knit them together. This we're making a really, 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 really large one. So that's option one, the granny square. So remember, option one, granny square. The other option, if we close that, if I go to where the pattern is, and this is in Ravelry if you're looking, on the same site, there's another easy pattern, which is this one. Let me make it a little bit bigger for you. So again, we're not picking colors, we're picking patterns. So this one, just for your reference, uses teal, there's some white, teal, light gray, dark gray, and like an apricot or an orange color, and it reverses them. The cool thing with this is that it is not done in the square, like I was mentioning earlier. This is done back and forth. But the neat thing is that if you notice, I know it's kind of hard to see, I'll try to zoom in a little bit, is that you're using different types of stitches. So there's some, I think in the bottom there was some single crochet, this is double crochet, this is double crochet in a different way, so you're actually making chunks. So you'll have an opportunity to make different types of stitches in this. So this is option two, and this one we'll just call back and forth, for lack of better terminology. So now it's your turn. So pick either option one, granny square, or option two, back and forth. You decide on the comments below.